Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I am Jeanette Mulvey. I'm the content director of Cooke, which is a publication for small businesses from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Thanks for joining me today. Now, just a few housekeeping notes before we get started. So, first part of this event, I'm going to be interviewing our panelists, who I will introduce you to shortly. And then later, I will be coming to you, the audience, for questions. So be sure to be thinking about your questions, and you can actually type them into the chat window at any time. And when we do the Q&A, if you'd like to just ask your question, you can just use the raise your hand icon, and I will call on you, and you can unmute and turn your camera on and ask that question. So I just need to give you a couple of specifics about using Teams, because I guess there's a couple of different versions. If you have an older version of Teams, hover the mouse over the center of your screen to access the menu bar. In the newer versions, the menu bar will always be visible up at the top of your screen. And you can you can mute and unmute there, turn your camera on and off there. You are all currently muted, but if I call on you to ask a question because you've raised your hand, then be sure to unmute. And also, just so you know, this is being recorded, so anything that you say in this clip, meeting, could end up being used in a clip that we might put on Cooke. So just know that this is basically public. So with that, I would like to introduce you to our panel. So first, we have Barbara Meikle, who is the founder of Meikle Fine Art in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We have Melissa Bercier, who is a PhD and is founder of Couch Clarity in Elmhurst, Illinois. And we have Allison Cooke, who is a principal and director of a hospitality design at Core DC in Washington, DC. But don't worry if you don't remember all of that, because I'm going to let them introduce themselves to you and tell you a little bit about who they are and what they do. So, Barbara, why don't you first? Hi.
Hi.
Why don't you tell everyone who you are, what you do, where you're based?
Okay. Well, my name is Barbara Meikle, and I am an artist. I live and have a gallery in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and I've owned the gallery for over 14 years. I've been painting and drawing since I was 5, and I make my living as an artist. I do bronzes as well as oil paintings. And I also raise a lot of money for animal rescue, our wildlife center, horse and donkey rescue, and all creatures great and small. So that's me.
Great. And before I go to our next person, tell us a little bit about that donkey behind you.
Yes, so this is a print of Bindi. He's one of the therapy donkeys we raise money for, and he works with handicapped kids. He's a great therapist in that regard. And so I love to do paintings of him, and we do prints to help them raise money for their programs.
Thank you. Melissa, hi, welcome. Melissa, tell us about you. So you're based in Illinois. Tell us about your business.
First of all, I think we need one of those donkeys in our offices because we do therapy.
She sells prints.
I'm Melissa Bercier. I own Couch Clarity, which is a private mental health practice in the western suburbs of Chicago. We provide individual, couples, group, and family psychotherapy. Currently, we have 4 locations. We have 5 buildings and 14 employees. And all of our locations are located on or near the Illinois Prairie Path, which is a beautiful walking and bike path that go through like west of Chicago, all the way far out west. So we picked our buildings near that path, so we can also do walk and talk therapy with our clients who choose to be outside in nature instead of just sitting in on the couch. We also love sitting on the couch for therapy. I'm also on the Small Business Council for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I've loved every minute of that and meeting so many different small business owners and entrepreneurs from all across the country.
Melissa, just tell everyone how your business model is a little different than traditional therapist business model.
Sure. So my practice is a group practice, which there are a lot of group practices out there. But all of my staff are employees, so they're not independent contractors. And I purposely formed my business in that way so we could have more of a team feel and just be together more as our own little community while we help the outside community. So I think it's helped us a lot grow together as a team, and we always hope to expand our locations actually throughout the nation is the goal. And so it's just been a really great way to have everybody as an employee, so we're all held accountable together in growing our business.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Allison.
Hi, ladies.
I think the first thing we need to know about Allison is you might think that's a fake backdrop, but it is not a fake backdrop. That is her real backdrop. So you get the award for best backdrop. So tell us about you and your business and what you do.
Well, I have to hold up my end of the bargain with the backdrop being in the architecture and design field. So it would be really bad if it was an awful backdrop. So I'm principal and director of hospitality design for Core Architecture and Design. We're based here in DC, and we've just only got one office in DC. So we ourselves are a somewhat small business. We do work in the Mid. Work kind of all over the country, and we do work from new apartment buildings all the way to libraries and theaters, like adaptive reuse of historical buildings. My personal focus is more on the interior side of restaurants and retail and hospitality work in general. So I have done work prototyping for very large brands that you may know, Hilton and Marriott among those. Have done work with notable chefs like Jose Andres, who, you know, who doesn't love him after everything he's done philanthropically, but also really enjoy working with small startup businesses as well. So we did the very first prototypes for Sweetgreen and Cava when they were first starting out. We work with a lot of local chains here to DC, like Silver Diner, if anybody's familiar with them. And then also navigating the design work with first-time operators. So if it's a fellow that's been a bartender and he wants to start his own place, you know, we've done those smaller businesses. Cotton and Reed Distillery. We've also worked on the retail side with local startups as well. So if you've heard of Dry Garment Care, they're a new small business chain to DC, and smaller retailers as well.
Thank you. So welcome to all of you. So we've all heard about the pandemic pivot. Everybody has a different one. So I would like to just talk a little bit about your businesses have pivoted and, you know, since the beginning of the pandemic and now. So Barbara, I'm coming back to you. Tell us, did you have to shut down your gallery in the beginning? How did you deal with that? And what has reopening looked like for you?
Well, we did shut down in March for about 9 weeks. And at that time, you know, every day we were just wondering what was going to happen. When we did open the end of May, because I'm in a tourist town and it was, you know, the beginning of the summer season, we were open for 3 days. We eventually stretched that to 4 days. Now we're open 6 days. So it's been, you know, little by little. I had to rely on my customer base, which I've collected for over, you know, really 20 years, a customer and collector information, and started doing a lot more online, reaching out, recording videos of my painting, doing plein air outside, painting the donkeys, because we used to have animal events at the gallery where the donkeys would come to the gallery, or I'd have the birds from the Wildlife Center come and I would paint them live. So we couldn't do that. So we would go to them and we filmed it. So we started a YouTube channel, and just all those kinds of things. I have a millennial and as well as a Gen Z that was working for me. So they advised me on all of the social media aspects, which was very important for an oldster like me. So.
And right now you're experiencing a real resurgence in tourists where you are in Santa Fe, right?
Yes, absolutely. Fall is a beautiful time here, and we're having a gorgeous fall with glorious, long, sunny, beautiful days. And everyone is deciding to drop what they're doing and come to Santa Fe and just enjoy it. So things are feeling somewhat normal, which is just incredible after the whole summer.
Great. I'm so glad to hear that.
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Barbara. I'm going to come to you, Melissa, and ask you the same question. How was your business impacted? Were you able to have people in the office? Was all of your walking and talking done outside?
Yeah, I mean, initially it was pretty complicated because as we all know, everything happened so fast. So we did have to shut down by the end of March. For the most part, we stopped seeing clients on March 16th, like right after we kind of found out what was going on. We did have some therapists make the choice on their own to continue to see clients in person for a little bit longer because there were still so many unknowns, and we just had to make those difficult decisions because we're dealing in mental health. We didn't want to just lock everybody out. And we had never done virtual sessions before. That was never my thing as a business owner. I felt that we really needed to see people in person and be able to read body language. And that was just really important to me in mental health. And so I had to look into very quickly our liability issues and how do we start a virtual platform. And also, many people might not know this, but a lot of insurance companies won't pay for virtual therapy sessions. So you have to be sometimes part of a certain group through an insurance company. But we were never allowed to bill for that through insurance until COVID. So we had to consider also that our clients, if we were in person, something that you might not think of is, when you're in a small office, you're talking for an hour straight, and your clients might be crying, they might be needing to blow their nose, they might be yelling, which, is considered dangerous and with COVID. And so if people had masks on, how are we going to manage people having to, take their mask off to blow their nose, which would not be good in a small office environment, or wipe their tears, or so. It was pretty complicated just because I had to protect the safety of our employees, and also I protect the safety of our clients. And so having that passed on in a small office would be really not a good thing. So we had to think about how to. And so literally that weekend of March 13th, I was researching, the virtual platforms. Also, we have to be HIPAA compliant. So I had to then involve my attorneys and figure out what were we allowed to do? How were we allowed to do this? Also, prior to COVID, we were never allowed to, if you could do a video therapy session, you were never allowed to use FaceTime, or a phone call even is not allowed or billable. But because of COVID, fortunately, the insurance companies and the different powers that be have allowed that for us because it's a pandemic. And so we needed to access our clients, any way we could. So we were allowed to FaceTime. We were allowed just to do phone calls. So we started that. And then I think did you also want me to answer how we then reopened, or?
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, sure.
So we'll stop you there. Yes, thank you. And that's all kinds of things that I never even would have thought of. So that's so interesting. And I will loop back to you for the reopening. Thank you, Melissa. So Allison, coming to you. So you, Allison, you can sort of talk about this two ways. You can talk about how your company, which is advising other companies, has pivoted, but also why don't you tell us what you're seeing the restaurants who you're advising do in terms of their pivoting?
Sure. Yeah. To start with our own business, we're used to working in a traditional office environment. And we're pretty socially distanced as it is with our desking layout, but we are an open office. So, everybody has that May or March 13th, March 16th timeframe that we said, hey, work from home, let's get everybody set up at home so everyone can be safe. And so with that came a lot of readjustment, of course, because we are a very collaborative design studio. So when you have projects in the midst of the creative planning stages, we had to really embrace this digital format of meetings, both in-house and with clients. From a revenue perspective, in general, 30% of our revenue is from our hospitality and restaurant work. And that just went off of a cliff, as you can imagine, as soon as restaurants started closing their doors and so forth. So while we were maintaining some of our revenue from our base building sector and other projects of a similar nature, it really left the hospitality team with this time on our hands. And we said, this is an industry that we love so dearly, support them in whatever way that we can. So we started looking at how people might prepare for reopening, because there was this reopening conversation out there. Nobody really was regulating it yet, in April, but some jurisdictions were able to open extremely early. Atlanta, Georgia, I spoke with a chef that has multiple restaurants down there. She's like, I can't believe how soon we're allowed to reopen. I'm completely unprepared for this. And so what we did with several chefs is we consulted with them, and maybe they only had like an open table, map, like when you would go online to make reservations, they didn't have architectural floor plans, but we would consult with them virtually, talk about the flow of their restaurant from a guest perspective and an operator perspective, and identify kind of those congestion points, things like that, and help them kind of put a plan in place, but also help them understand, assess the risk. Is it worth it for you to reopen right now or not? As soon as you can, or hold off a little bit. And so a lot of that was able to help them understand how many seats they might be able to get inside and what the risk is, both to customers and staff. So that was how we really tried to pivot that. We did create a safe reopening guide, and we hosted a webinar as well. So if anybody ever goes to our website, that's free to just download if you're curious to see that. But in terms of the pivots I've seen from clients, there was a luxury fragrance boutique, and we did host another webinar that was focused on local DC retailers and kind of how they've pivoted their businesses. So I mentioned Ariel Shoshana, so they're a luxury fragrance boutique out here in Virginia, which we designed, and she said that most of their business before was from customers walking through the door. Well, they were seeing a huge uptick in online orders, even though it's fragrance, right? You would think that that's something that you want to experience in person, but she was hosting virtual sniff-alongs. So if they had a new release, you could sign up for it. They would send you samples in the mail in advance, and then they would do something online. So they pivoted to a lot of online. They also organized that they could do direct shipping straight from their different manufacturers to streamline getting products to people. We saw Dry Garment Care, one of our clients who is focused on dry cleaning and alterations. Nobody's going to work anymore, so nobody needs to do dry cleaning, so their business kind of fell off a cliff, but they have locker concierge in various apartment buildings. So it's a touch-free concierge service to pick up and launder, but they really focused on their philanthropic efforts and doing clothing drives for the community and so forth to get through that. But on the restaurant side, we've seen people transition to prepackaged goods from full service restaurants. If they have, something canned or jarred that they can sell to customers, virtual cooking classes, leaning on gift cards. We've seen some people say, hey, I'm going to try to keep my staff, but I'm going to employ them as delivery drivers. And cocktail and wine delivery was a huge thing as well. Some people have shifted to being more purveyors in marketplaces versus full service restaurants. And then just one chef in particular, Paula Velez, who's a pastry chef here in DC, she created Bakers Against Racism during this time as well, which has raised millions of dollars internationally for anti-racist groups. So I think people are making good use of the spare time, even if it's not a huge revenue boost for their restaurant in particular, but they are talking about a lot of reinvention of the industry.
Yeah, thank you. So Barbara, I'm going to come back to you. I mean, this session is called Adapting Your Business in a Socially Distant World. So, Barbara, you ran an art gallery. So up until the pandemic, all of your business was done basically within the four walls of your art gallery, correct? People came in, they looked at art, they bought art. So tell us how that's changed, both in terms of how you're selling, because I know there's now a virtual component, but also what precautions have you taken inside the gallery now that you're open to keep people safe?
Right. So we always had an online presence. That has been really important. So when we had to close down, we just, every new piece that I would do or my other artists would do, we would send that out to people so they could see the work. We also started photoshopping paintings onto people's walls. So you could send us images of your wall where you needed a painting, and we'd get the dimensions, and then we'd find the right size piece. And if the painting was too small or too large that I had done, I do lots of commissions. So my commission business actually has really flourished. People really want to have a special piece in their home now, and because they're spending a lot of time in their home. So that's been a big, sort of a big boost to what I've been doing. And then we do sanitizing in our gallery. So we have people, we limit the amount of people that come in, but generally in art gallery strolling, you only have 3 or 4 people at a time in the gallery anyway. That's just the traffic pattern. So we're able to clean after they leave. And of course, it's a mask requirement to come inside. And I do sometimes set up a tent outside. In fact, I'll be doing that this Saturday. Because it'll be a gorgeous October Saturday. So I'll be painting outside, which will attract people that are walking down the street, and which is how you see galleries in Santa Fe. You can literally walk to 200 galleries in our town. So it's very special. The foot traffic part is amazing. So if I'm outside painting, they're more apt to see me, see the work. What is she doing? You know, those crazy colors, and go inside and fall in love with something.
Yeah, thank you, Barbara. Melissa, so you set the stage for us and told us all of these things that probably none of us ever thought about in terms of the challenges your business was facing during the pandemic. So how did you deal with that? Tell us how you're dealing with customer and employee safety, and how that's changed since you reopened. Oh, and you're on mute. So wait, hold on. Unmute and then start over. There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also forgot to include that, you know, as therapists, we're not used to having people in our homes or us being in our clients' homes. So that was a huge change for us because there's a lot of confidentiality issues.
You mean with the virtual appointments now?
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Now, just to be clear, no, clients were not going to therapists' homes. You mean because you could see into each other's homes virtually, right?
Yes. Yeah. So now we've moved into the virtual appointments, and now we're being seen in our homes. We're seeing our clients' homes. We're seeing our pets, as my cats joined me earlier before we started. Kids yelling, you know, whatever's going on in the background. So that created also another layer of just trying to orchestrate how are we going to do this. So we've had to have clients and ourselves even sometimes be in our cars, you know, if we don't have a space that is private or confidential. So that's another factor that we had to deal with. But as far as reopening and how we've, you know, been able to start that, we only started that in July. And how we did it is we created some phases because, you know, our most important concern is that our staff and our employees feel comfortable with what they're doing and they feel safe. And so we started first with our walk and talk clients. So the clients that were okay with walking and talking and meeting outside, and we felt that was safer. So we allowed those therapists and clients to start back in July. And then after that, we worked that for about one phase. And we also had to include a whole system of, we had to take temperatures, we still do, of our clients and our employees. We had to create forms for that, you know, for the symptoms of COVID to make sure people don't have COVID. We had to send out, we still do, emails 24 hours in advance asking about symptoms because of the liability issues if we were to get COVID or give it to a client or vice versa. So then after the walk and talk clients started, then we started opening up our lobbies because it was more airspace and people might feel more comfortable being more than 6 feet away from your client with a mask on, of course. And so then I had to figure out, only one therapist per location. So we had to switch people around. Usually, one of our locations has 5 offices, and we were used to all the hustle and bustle of clients and therapists, and it was a great environment. And but now it's one therapist per location. Our clients have to wait outside. They have to text their therapist when they've arrived. So then we don't have clients passing each other in the hallways and risking, the possibility of infecting others. And so then from there, we have allowed therapists who feel comfortable to then see clients who also feel comfortable back in their offices. And if the whole office space is empty, they can leave their doors open. So again, there's more airspace, because from what we know, and I won't get into all the medical stuff, but from the medical advice that we've gotten, if you are talking constantly for 10 minutes or more, your risk increases. So if you're talking for an hour, like I was talking about before, an hour straight of straight talking or crying or blowing your nose or whatever, the risks, we are told, increase. So that's where we're at right now. Like we're just, drip feeding the people that want to come in into different locations. I'm managing, who goes where, so we don't have too much congestion. And then we're going to kind of stay at that level right now until, we feel that it's safest for more people to come back into the office, which unfortunately I don't think will be anytime soon.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Melissa. So Allison, Barbara and Melissa have talked about just really having to change the nuts and bolts of how you run your business. So in terms of the hospitality industry, can you talk about that? Just some ideas and things that you've seen, and maybe things that actually will stick with us for a long time, even after the pandemic, because they're actually better ways of operating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is true. We're learning a lot from this. And, some operators that I work with are like, well, this will be over soon and we'll be through it. But that's a very small percentage of the operators that I work with. Many of them are just rethinking things in general, limiting high touch environments. So something that I have seen that was already starting to fill the gap in terms of what we needed to provide spatially or programmatically was kind of the digital realm. And so just the interaction through social media and the promotion, and then in terms of even the ordering process. So DC is not fully reopened as far as restaurants, but there's a capacity limitation for indoor dining. And so a lot of them have the code on the tabletop that you can scan with your phone, place your order without a server having to come take your order, and then the food's delivered. And in most cases that I've experienced, the speed of service is actually quite faster. Some restaurants say, no, I want to stick with that like human interaction because I'm able to make a connection with them and actually upsell product. But I have found with kind of this digital piece that, your food hits the table or your drinks hit the table so quickly, you eat it and you're like, well, I want another taco, so I mean, sitting there, you're just ordering because you can do it at your leisure. You can tack on things throughout your experience. So I think that is something that's going to stick with us, even though people always will want that human engagement. I think we're learning a lot about airflow in buildings, obviously, and HVAC considerations. And so we have seen a lot of restaurants hoping to be able to upgrade that, but not being able to either afford the upgrade, or the building that they are within, the age of the systems are just too old that they can't change filters or things like other limiting factors. But I think one of the things that we'll have to grapple with now is just increasing the outside airflow into a building to flush it out. It's like, air conditioning your building on a 99-degree day and then open all the windows up, and the system has to work that much harder. So our industry was moving into such an energy efficient mode, and now we're asking these buildings to perform at a much heavier load rate. So I think that there's going to have to be some intersection of how we're riding that ship in terms of the environmental impact while making spaces safer. But I think as far as other clients that are, you know, because closings are happening for sure. I know we're going to see more of that through the winter months. You know, January, February is always terrible for this industry right after the holidays. But people are looking at spaces, they're out there. And so the things that they're looking at in the future, I see very few leases getting signed if there isn't the opportunity for an outdoor cafe space for them. A lot of them are pivoting some of their prototypes to add an outdoor component. You know, if they were purely an indoor component before, I'm starting to see people maybe for fast casual spaces say, I don't need as much seating because I'm able to amplify my business with carry out and delivery models. So those are all just a few things of what I've been seeing that I think may start to move forward. You know, even Starbucks, they announced they were going to close all these cafes, like the classic third space that we've been enjoying for so long, and saying it's so much easier for us to just run these carry out and take out models in certain locations. So we have had some clients actually open during this process too. So Moderator, which was a really interesting project, it's staffed and owned by deaf and hard of hearing employees, and it is a Neapolitan pizza restaurant here in DC. So they were struggling with not just you know, the COVID issue, but in terms of communication, a lot of them are used to being able to lip read as well as doing American Sign Language. So when you have the masks on, that further complicates things. So we're helping them kind of looking at their space and the sight lines and helping them understand what makes the most sense for them to open with indoor, you know, expediting an outdoor cafe for them. You know, in DC and a lot of other cities, they're taking over parking spaces and doing parklets. So we have been working a lot with the city to re-envision those outdoor spaces. I think that's really going to continue. Cities need to continue to support these restaurants and retailers seasonally, because you can't anticipate every worst case scenario, but if it's not COVID, it's like, what's the next thing, you know? So I think that this has taught us a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. So I'm going to go to the audience for Q&A. So audience members, you can type them in the chat or you can raise your hand and I will call on you and you can actually ask your question using your camera, turn your camera on. So I will first throw this out to the group, whoever wants to answer. On my panel, I mean, what is the biggest learning moment for you during this whole thing? What have you learned that you, you know, wouldn't have learned before and that you will now apply going forward?
I can start. For us, I think it was, like I was talking about before, the teletherapy component, which we had never, not that we didn't know about it before, but we just didn't do it before. And now that we have that, we definitely would love to incorporate that into 50% of our business when this is hopefully back to whatever normal will be. Because we have found that the teletherapy is so helpful for people that just don't have time to get to our offices or, you know, can just pull up in their bedroom when the kids are downstairs and have a nice therapy session. So that's been really helpful. And that is definitely something that we would like to continue that we had before.
Sure. Thank you. Barbara or Allison, do you have, go ahead, Barbara, I can see your.
Yeah. The limiting, I used to be open 7 days a week. I worked very hard to make this gallery successful. Then when we were forced to limit our hours and the time spent in the gallery, I found that I could do that and relax, spend a little more time in the studio and have the same successful business. Now I've had the gallery for over 14 years, so that makes a difference in this town and in my industry because people know my work and they know how to find me. But I just feel so fortunate that I found out that I can take a breath and everything doesn't fall apart. So it's pretty wonderful.
Thank you. So Allison, I'm gonna give you the first shot at this question just because you didn't answer the last one, but I think this is a good question. I'd like all of you to answer it if you can. Allison, how are you seeing or advising your clients to diplomatically deal with the mask and social distancing guidelines? Because it's, everyone has experienced this problem.
Yeah, it's really difficult. And that was, to be honest, a huge element for a lot of operators on whether or not and at what capacity they were going to reopen, even once they were allowed to reopen. And it has been really hard for them, So one of the things that we've talked about through all of this, and I think it's a huge learning as well to the earlier question, is how key communication is amongst your staff, with your customers, to lay the ground rules for, you can't protect everyone all of the time. And so when you're preparing, in the case of a restaurant, a diner to enter your space, what can they expect from the operator, and what does the operator expect from them? And so I think that they can head off a lot of those issues when you're just, you're putting it on social media. It's a sign outside before they enter the restaurant. It's an email that you get when you make your reservation that just prepares the guest about what they're meant to expect, and what's expected of them likewise. So I know that a lot of clients have had difficulty with that, and just, again, diplomatically asking customers to leave the restaurant if they haven't been behaving properly, because of course those people that are most comfortable returning are most likely the more, I guess, the biggest risk takers, so to speak. But it does set things up in terms of, I've seen them setting gateways as well, or stations, the host station. You think of people as gatekeepers in a space to also try to mitigate that as much as possible, and friendly reminders. So
yeah, thank you. What about Melissa or Barbara? Have either of you encountered that challenge yet, and how are you dealing with that?
I'm in a very supportive community for wearing masks and doing what we can. So we have a sign up, and everyone that comes in, we always have our mask on, and then they have to have a mask on when they enter. And we just have one entrance and exit for our collectors. So it hasn't been a problem at all. I feel very fortunate about that.
Great. What about you, Melissa? Have you had any challenges with that?
Fortunately, we've been very lucky. People have been supportive of, the rules that we have as far as the PPE. And what I've done is I've empowered my employees that if they are not feeling comfortable with a particular client who they know maybe isn't practicing, proper social distancing, or they know that out in the community, because of what they're told, that they're being surrounded and not being careful without masks, then our employees are allowed to contact the client and say, I don't feel comfortable meeting in person today. Can we do a phone session? Luckily, we have that option now. Or do you want to skip a week and, we can see each other the next week? So we try to, be supportive. We give the heads up with an email, and go through the guidelines, have our clients sign something. But I think it's most important for my employees to feel comfortable and being able to kind of cut that off if we have to do that and say, I can't see you today. So, but luckily we haven't had that issue yet.
Sure. Good. I'm glad to hear that. So we have a question here from Angela in the audience, and she asks about joining small business organizations in your communities. I know, Melissa, you're on the Small Business Council for the U.S. Chamber, but maybe I'll go to Allison first. Do you experience, either yourselves or your clients, have you seen more of people joining together in groups or in networking and ways to work together?
Yeah, I absolutely have. The hospitality industry locally here, different restaurateurs, they've really bonded together in starting different initiatives. And they've created their own kind of funding vehicle, because, the PPP loans, the timing of those has been pretty worthless for their industry. They weren't able to reopen and pay staff at the time that they've likely got those loans. So they've had to really bond together, work with local government here to, again, push forward on those parklet spaces, outdoor dining. One locally started with several other restaurants the Power of 10 initiative. So for $10,000 of money raised a week, they can employ 10 employees, and then they can provide 1,000 meals to the community. So again, it's just this creativity of them reaching out, and not even in the restaurant industry. Our client, the Dry Garment Care, reached out to a restaurant here and said, like, hey, let's do some sort of clothing drive together because our retail businesses are in the same neighborhood. So here in DC, H Street, Main Street, you know, those little pockets and communities of organizations, I think they're all working together with their neighbors to see how they can activate streetscapes. And I had this comment from Ariel Shoshana, the luxury fragrance boutique. She said, well, I may be reopening safely, but if the business next to me is not, that sets a bad tone for the whole development and the whole kind of retail streetscape. So I think it is really, really important for those small businesses to work together.
Yeah. Barbara, I know that you talked about all the galleries in Santa Fe, how teamed up with the other small businesses, restaurants, galleries.
Well, we have two gallery associations, and we belong to both of them. And they send out bulletins about what the governor has recommended for different phases of opening, reopening. So we're all very aware of that. We're all on a big email chain. And then we also, you know, our restaurants are super important to our community because we've got, you know, probably 150 restaurants in our area. And so we're constantly trying to support them by giving recommendations. So I make sure when people come into the gallery that I find out where they're eating dinner that night, or if they have any plans. And if they don't, boy, I give them suggestions about takeout and, you know, patio dining, because we can still do that here. The weather's great. So there's sort of an intertwine of those two industries that have really, I think we're continuing to support each other in that way.
Thanks. What about you, Melissa? Any teaming up?
Yeah, I would say probably the two biggest ones are the Facebook groups that one of our local female business owners started. She started a COVID small business group for our community. And so everybody is still supporting each other through that and promoting other people's businesses and saying, hey, go here and get dinner at this restaurant locally. And also our city Facebook pages have also been picking each one of us, you know, each week and promoting our business for us, and just trying for everybody to shop small business, stay local, and help each other out.
Great. So we talked a little bit about communicating with your customers in terms of setting boundaries and making sure they're following the social distancing guidelines. But, you know, you just talked about Facebook, Melissa. So I'll start with you and then I'll go back around. But I guess I would love to talk more just about the value of social media and email marketing too, or whatever else you can think of, you know, that to help you communicate to your customers and maybe even to your community more broadly, just what your status is and what your expectations are about how your business operations are changing.
Yeah, so Facebook has been wonderful in order to, you know, give out information or let people know what we're doing. You know, just communicating with our team as well, and keeping everybody really up to date on what's going on. And, you know, we've been so transparent with everybody about what we're working on or how we're trying to do something, or letting people know, like, this is what we're doing. A funny thing is when COVID started, I thought TikTok was such a wonderful social media platform just to bring in some happiness and like see what other people were doing during the beginning of the quarantine. And so that was just, I mean, it didn't help promote my business, but it just helped with happiness and positive mental health.
Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. Allison, how about you? Just marketing and communicating through the pandemic. Just how has your business, maybe not your business, but your how are they using that? I would think it would be particularly important for restaurants just because there's a lot of information that needs to be given.
Yeah, I mean, restaurants, it's like when you can't taste the food, so the next thing is the visual. So Instagram has been huge for restaurants, retailers, to entice people to order from them and just communicate because, they're not going to update their website every day, but if they have a family meal special that's running, they're going to use those more fluid forms of social media to kind of announce what's going on. A lot of them, of course, have found so much strength from their local following that they already have. And so to your point about TikTok, I think it's amazing. You get this more personal kind of connection to some of the chefs or the operators, and they're having a little bit more fun with that, doing little demos, or you get a little view into their personal life as well and what's going on in their restaurants. And it also conveys, the safety measures that they're taking as well. So I think they've really leveraged that. Some people are doing, again, to increase that desirability, having something announced as okay, starting tomorrow, it's a limited release donut or something, sign up for your meal. So I think those more fluid forms of social media have worked really well to try and generate some quick business for them and awareness.
Yeah. Barbara, what about you? You talked about photoshopping art on people's walls. So actually, I wanted to ask a clarification about that. Did you mean that you could do that so that they could see what it would look like before they decided if they wanted to purchase it?
Yeah. Absolutely. And a big factor is the size that they might need for that wall, what's the most appropriate size of the piece, because since I do so many commissions, and they love that landscape, but I could do it, in a different size range. And we also Photoshop frames on the work, so you can see what is framed. I mean, basically, we're doing a house call, but we're doing it virtually. And it's really gotten people so happy with the thought that they feel comfortable in making the purchase, because what I'm selling is an essential luxury. That's how I view it. We need art in our lives, but extra bit of money that you usually, either put aside or that it's for something that is a treat for you. So we want to make sure that people feel so happy and comfortable in purchasing it. And I have to say, Instagram is, and tied to Facebook, is how I sell so much work. Sometimes I posted a painting I did of a rooster 2 days ago. I sold it the same day, doing Instagram and then Facebook, and my collectors follow along oh, I've never seen you paint a rooster. Oh, I love it. Oh, my kitchen's full of roosters. I need that painting. And before you know it, so that visual has been essential really for my business.
Yeah, thank you. We all sort of touched on virtual events in one way or another. Have any of you monetized a virtual event?
I have. The way, though, I did it was one of the school districts approached me and asked me to offer virtual events to their staff, their students, and their parents during this time. So I've been working with a school district that I'm now contracted with. And so we are doing stress reduction for parents that are in the midst of e-learning, and different mindfulness techniques for children who are anxious during this time of home learning. And then also compassion fatigue, information and coping skills training for the teachers and the staff of schools that are incredibly stressed right now. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to work with one of the school districts here and offer that mental health support for them.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else? Have either of you done any sort of monetized? No, I see Barbara shaking her head.
Well,
no.
Not personally, but obviously the virtual cooking classes, some chefs have pivoted to that and saying, and people are loving it because you can, for a high price tag in some cases and not for others, you get personal time with a chef who otherwise you would never have access to.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good point. So we are getting close to the end. So I wanted to just take this opportunity to offer the audience the chance, in case anyone's being shy, you can actually raise your hand and I will call on you, and you can actually ask a question live and in person. I don't see anyone taking me up on that, but I just wanted to make that offer. So we have a few minutes left, and I think I would like to ask each of you to end on a positive note. I would love to ask each of you, my guests, what one like silver lining of the pandemic has been for you, whether it's for your business or for you personally. Although Barbara, I know we learned that this extra time has been great for you. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to come to you last. So you have a chance to think of a second silver lining. But Melissa, why don't I start with you? Just has there been any silver linings for you?
Yes, absolutely. I think the biggest one is our team has gotten so close because of this pandemic. I mean, we have been able to offer each other much more unconditional support because we've been kind of forced to go on video and especially more often because we need to check in with each other. And I think what's unique for us as mental health workers is when this pandemic began, everybody was going through it, but we were the ones having to work with our clients in order to help them through it at the same time while we are going through it. And so I really had to get in there and really support each one of our team members to make sure that their mental health was supported and as healthy as they could be for our clients. And I think because of all of that and because of this, we have such a strong team. Like, I can't even believe it. Like, we are just so in each other, and we're just looking so forward now to growing because we've gone through this traumatic experience along with our clients, and it's just helped us all grow as therapists.
Thank you. Allison, what about you? Any silver linings for your work or your customers or personally, however you want to answer?
Sure. I mean, obviously, I want to echo what Melissa was saying. Our team has grown incredibly close, even though we're, working from home. We have been checking in on each other, and like just by the nature of seeing other people's homes, as you mentioned, you see people's kids running in and out, the dogs, cats, like everything. So it's sort of a little bit more of an unfiltered way to work, which I think has been a little bit healthy for everyone. I also completely resonate what Barbara said earlier about finding that personal balance. I have always struggled with being a micromanager and trying to like let go of responsibility and let the people working with you grow up into filling those roles that you need to give some of that off to them. And so I think because we're not all in the same space, it's helped people to feel empowered to kind of answer questions and take that next step and take that initiative and be more independent so that, our team can trust one another a little bit more. And I can trust them to be like, what, I don't have to answer that question right now because the team's got it, so that has taught me a lot more of that great work-life balance and understanding too, that we don't physically need to be in the same space for everything all the time. Like there's some parts of our process where people just need to do heads down work, and that's great for them to do it from home, and more flexibility in where they can be when. And also just the time savings of virtual meetings. It is nice to meet in person with people for certain things, but the limited like travel time is amazing for some of these meetings to do it in format when appropriate. So I think it's going to shift the way that we work a little bit.
Thank you. And Barbara, I will give you the last word before I wrap up. Anything else for you that
Well, yeah, having the extra time has given me more time with my work and let me think about my long game, like how much longer do I want to be a painter, and what big projects do I have in mind? I really have the space now to think about that and to plan and to get excited for the future. So that's helping me get through some of these, strange times we're living in right now.
Yeah, thank you. I love that you can think about the future right now. So I just want to say thank you to all of you. We have reached the end of our hour. Thank you to our audience. It was my pleasure to interview the three of you. So for everyone in the audience, do not forget to join us again tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern time for our general session. And thank you everyone for joining us for the Big Week for Small Business. It was great talking to you, and I'm so glad you joined us. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.